My name is Melanie Goodridge, and I am the Pre-Employment Support Navigator here at reachAbility. Today, we are proud to host a presentation and panel discussing accessibility for all, research on age-friendly communities. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are honored to work and serve on this land. We stand with the protesters across Canada and the globe, demanding an end to racism, discrimination, and violence. We acknowledge the deep and powerful challenges faced by all marginalized communities in Nova Scotia, Canada, and beyond. So today we have four panelists joining us. We have Katie Vaughan, who is a recent graduate from the Master of Planning program at Dalhousie University. She's really passionate about increasing population health by addressing inequalities in the built environment. And she's also a researcher with the Peach Research Unit at Dalhousie University's School of Planning. So Peach stands for Planning for Equity, Accessibility, and Community Health. And they work together with community partners to grow and share knowledge in the fields of planning, urban design that can lead to more inclusive and healthy communities. One of the community partners Katie's been so fortunate to work with is Meagan McDonald of Community Links. After completing her undergraduate degree at Dalhousie University with a major in English, Meagan's gone on to spend almost 20 years working in the social services sector and employment support, mental health, and youth work. She's always been drawn to working with people and within communities. As a volunteer, she's gained skills and experience in the areas of social justice, environmentalism, food security, grief support, and community development. Finally, we're very excited to announce that we are also joined by two very important community partners, Wendy and McDonald of Halifax and Andree Crepeau of Sydney. These are two of the participants in this study that Katie's going to present today. After presenting the findings and after we hear a little bit from Meagan as well, we're going to have a panel discussion with all four people. So that's going to be really exciting. So what we'll do right now is turn things over to Meagan. She's going to chat a little bit about how Community Links was involved.
Hi there. Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So I just wanted to tell you a bit about Community Links. So Community Links is a nonprofit organization. Our vision is that all Nova Scotians can age well in their communities. And our mission, Community Links, is a province-wide organization that promotes and supports age-friendly communities by connecting individuals and organizations. Our values include equity, inclusion, collaboration, respect, compassion, transparency, accountability, and engagement. So a little bit about what we do. So within Community Links works on knowledge exchange, capacity building, and advocacy work. So a lot of the work that we do is done through our coalitions. So all across the province, we have Aging Well Together coalitions, and those are chaired by our regional coordinators, so my colleagues. We bring together individuals, local service providers, and community stakeholders to support Aging Well initiatives in regions across Nova Scotia. Membership is free. It is absolutely open to older adults, and we invite anyone who's interested to get in touch with us. We also include those who work with and for older adults, and really anyone who's passionate about aging well in Nova Scotia. So as you can see, we have coalitions across the province. The key issues that we address at Community Links are age-friendly communities, healthy aging, and ageism. And so with age-friendly communities, we're talking about enabling older adults to live safely, enjoy good health, and have opportunities to be active and engaged within their community. Healthy aging is the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in older adults. And of course, that can look different for everyone. So healthy aging is a very personal, it's a personal reality, and it's different for all, and we support everyone wherever they are in that journey. And then the last issue that we address is ageism. So we look at the prejudice or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age. So that's just a little bit about us. You can find us on the web at various platforms and lots of information on our website, which is nsql.ca. communitylinks.ca. And I just wanted to share a quote with you from the Community Development Alliance Scotland that really kind of encapsulates how we see ourselves in community. So in the end, it is what communities can do for themselves that matters. But there usually needs to be something in the background, some person or organization to help get things started, or to whom people can turn for advice or support, or to build up the right skills. So we hope that that's us sometimes. So I'm gonna, there we go.
I think that's a perfect transition and a perfect quote that really describes why we're here, right? Because I think everyone on this screen right now is working towards being that person, that partnership, that community agency that can provide that link in the community, community links. So we'll go over to Katie now, and she'll talk a bit about her research, and then we'll get into the panel discussion.
Great, thank you, Melanie. I'm also just going to share my screen with you. All right. So thank you so much for inviting me to share these findings and for Megan and I to be here. We're so excited. So I'm sharing right now the results from phase 1 of the Spaces That Work For Me project. This is just going to be a brief overview of, actually, I'll turn over to the agenda quickly here. A brief overview of the project background, what our purpose was, very briefly looking into the methods, but I'm really going to focus in on the results as this is what is so important to, and hopefully we're going to continue to discuss after this presentation. Also, I will note, if you would like to learn more, please reach out to us, as I can send along the full report for more information. So by 2030, more than 1 in 4 Nova Scotians will be age 65 and older. And older adults have a unique set of challenges in navigating the built environment, as they may experience challenges with mobility, hearing, vision, pain, or memory as they age. And now, historically, the built environment has been designed for more average citizens, those who are usually younger, more physically and mentally high functioning. And this is what creates a gap between what the built environment enables. And when I say built environment, this includes everything from our streets, our public spaces, and everywhere that we go to and use within our daily lives. So what we want to do is we want to bridge this gap, and just to make everyone able to conduct their daily activities independently. And this includes walking to the park, getting groceries, or going to church. So few Canadian studies have worked directly with older adults, and they've been successful in identifying concerns and obstacles with accessing the neighborhood built environment. However, researchers have yet to do this and examine accessibility in the province of Nova Scotia, let alone examine accessibility from the perspective of older adults in Nova Scotia. So this brings me to the purpose of this research. The aim is to better understand the accessible design needs of older adults in the neighborhood built environment by soliciting their perspectives from their lived experience. And to do this, we used a participatory action research method called Photo Voice. So what Photo Voice is, it's a qualitative visual research method, and it uses photographs and stories to capture the participants' experiential knowledge. So what this method did is it allowed the participating older adults to define and communicate their own perception of what accessible, age-friendly design looks like in their communities. So following ethics approval, a total of 12 older adults aged 60 and older living across the province of Nova Scotia participated in the study. 9 women, 3 men, and half of the participants disclosed experiencing mobility or health challenge. Now, this research took place during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the Photo Voice protocol was adapted to accommodate social distancing restrictions. So once the consent form was signed, and participants chose one of 3 photo taking options. So 7 participants chose option 1, the independent option where they took photographs on their own. 2 participants chose option 2, another independent option, but with a provided camera. And then for both of these options, a follow-up interview took place by phone, and we shared the photographs and we discussed each photograph of what it meant, what it's telling us. Is this an accessible example or an inaccessible example? And then for option three participants chose option 3. And this was offered to individuals who are not comfortable or able to go out in their community and take photographs. So an interview took place by phone. We discussed specific examples in their community. And then after the interview, I went out and took the photographs on their behalf and just confirmed that these were correct. And now I will mention here, each participant submitted 12 photographs. So 6 photographs of accessible, age-friendly spaces in their neighborhoods. These were places that felt comfortable and safe. And then 6 inaccessible photographs. So places that did not feel accessible and they felt uncomfortable and not safe. So now getting into the interesting piece of this conversation, the results. So we got a total of 129 photographs and stories, and these depicted accessible and inaccessible designs. And really here, the expertise of the participants provided many insights on environmental designs that are really important when we're aiming to create age-friendly, accessible communities for older adults. And 4 main themes emerged. So these included street safety, frequent resting areas, access to green space, and having easy access to businesses and services. So street safety, almost all of the participating older adults submitted stories and photographs discussing street safety. And what we found was regardless of the area, urban, suburban, or rural, there's a lot of fear and anxiety around feeling safe as a pedestrian or cyclist. And this confirms what we've already known from other studies, that feeling safe is crucial to promoting walking. So when older adults perceive their streets to be safe, they're much more likely to be outdoors and active in their communities. So in order to improve street safety, the older adults who participated in the project provided us with a lot of great examples of where they do feel safe. And this is what I'm highlighting on the slide here. So traffic calming was really important. So having ideas of signage, as you can see here on a crosswalk, having speed humps, street roadblocks, and also having bump outs. Also, what was really important is having a raised sidewalk, a barrier between themselves and a vehicle, or having protected bicycle lanes. And then lastly, having really well-marked crosswalks was really important. So having updated, really high to see paint, having tactile indicators, and having like visual signal cues at crossing areas. Now, another really common thing that came up was having access to frequent resting areas. So half of the participants discussed the importance of having a place to rest when they're out walking on a street or out walking on a trail. And some of the participating older adults explained how they've gotten in trouble when there's a lack of seating. For example, one participant shared her story, how she's forced to sit on a piece of residential property, usually at someone's front steps, when she gets in trouble when she's walking in her communities, as there's just nowhere else to lean on. So the importance of seating really can be overlooked by those who are influencing the built environment. And one participant recently experienced that firsthand. A bench that she really relied on while being out in the community had been removed. So really, as people who are influencing the built environment, we really need to think twice before we're removing areas of rest, and we need to be providing more areas of rest. So some examples of what this looks like and how we can do it more. This is a little parklet in Halifax, how there's seating and some grass. Having benches at the top of a steep hill was really important. You can take a break once you go up if you're walking a trail. Also having a place to sit, but we want to make sure that we're doing this in the right way. So this photo shows the bench. It's in the wrong direction. It's not facing the water. So we need to be mindful when we're providing these opportunities of rest. And then also having places to rest when we're waiting for transit, and also just along the sidewalk. We can get quite innovative and creative when we're providing more spaces. So again, regardless of urban, suburban, and rural, another key ingredient was having access to green space. So participants shared stories of having trails, parks, and recreation areas. They used the words therapeutic, natural beauty, and connection when they described these spaces. So in urban areas, participants discussed feeling connected and relaxed when they were in parks such as the public gardens. And then in rural areas, the participants really enjoyed using multi-use trails where they felt safe walking and cycling. So examples of green spaces that really do feel age-friendly and accessible to the participants, they were connected, they had a purpose, such as a trail leading to a grocery store. Also, they had really good signage. As you can see here, a map informing you on the trail before you start walking, or also information panels along the trail. Also, seating, again, it's really important here. And having really good maintenance, because tripping hazards were frequently brought up as a really big barrier. So in Nova Scotia, we're fortunate to have a lot of great access to green spaces, but we really need to make sure these green spaces are accessible and usable by everyone. And now lastly, having access to businesses and services, really another important ingredient to designing age-friendly, accessible communities. So the older adults expressed feeling grateful and safe when they could have easy access to convenience stores, grocery stores, restaurants, recreation centers, and public washrooms were really important. So, however, even if these places exist in close distance, another important thing is that the entrances to these businesses and services are actually accessible and people can get in independently because many participants expressed feeling frustrated when they couldn't get in independently. So to overcome poor access, examples of businesses and services that do feel age-friendly and accessible, they had automatic sliding doors, so you can just walk right in. They have ramps, they also have really good solid railings. They have sidewalks leading right up to the front entryway because parking lots come with a lot of anxiety and danger. So these are just a few examples of how we can make these entrances more accessible for everyone. So now briefly, I'm just going to touch on some of the challenges. Although technology is what made this project possible during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was still a little bit of an issue. Some of the older adults were not comfortable using video conferencing software, such as Zoom, as we're using today. So we weren't able to do a typical focus group session. So usually you would have, after the photos were taken, 5 or 6 of the participants would sit down and share their photographs and have those common stories. So unfortunately, we just had to do one-on-one interviews, but it just like a typical photo voice would have had that focus group at the end. Another challenge was recruitment. Although I did partner with Community Links and Meagan is here today, recruitment was still really challenging. So we ended up having to change the age from anyone who was 65 and older, which is the typical definition of an older adult from the province of Nova Scotia. We ended up dropping it to anyone who was 60 and older. And that allowed us to get 12 participants who really they gave us so much insight. And 12 participants is very typical for a photo voice study, regardless of the pandemic. So we were really pleased to get so many participants. And despite these challenges, there was a lot of opportunities with doing a remote photo voice. This allowed the photo taking options and adaptions, which got to accommodate a variety of different needs. If not for option 3 of the participants wouldn't have been able to participate in any photo voice study. So as a researcher who's going to continue on doing photo voice studies, is really important to know and making sure that we continue to be creative and providing a lot of adaptions. Another opportunity was that we got to go Nova Scotia wide because it's really important when we're talking about age friendliness in Nova Scotia that we're looking at our rural, suburban, and urban areas. So this was a great first step, but we are expanding on the project and it really, in the future, we're excited to be able to continue engaging with older adults and continuing to see the differences between what accessible age-friendly communities look like and the differences between rural, urban, and suburban communities. So this concludes the presentation portion. At this time, I am just going to quickly thank the supervisor to the research, Dr. Makiko Terashima, also Community Links for partnering on this project. This project would not have been possible without them, and also the MSSU for providing funding for the first stage. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to the 2 participants who are actually with us today. You just saw some of their great photographs, and we're going to continue on with this discussion. So Wendy and Andre are both here. So I'm going to pass it on to Wendy first. And Wendy, if you can just share some of your why you participated, what got your interest, and also what was your experience like during the participating in this project?
Well, I guess what caught my eye was the term photo voice. I'm a lifelong learner, and I was curious about the tool that was going to be used. I have been nearly 20 years volunteering in the local community trails group, so I felt that I could contribute knowingly to the project, knowing the local trails and the community. We've lived in Halifax for 45 years, so have certainly seen a lot of changes, rapid growth, maybe too quickly at times, and overlooking some of the things that Katie was looking for in her project. And my partner, Bob, and I decided we'd both participate. It gave us an excuse during COVID to get out and about, because then we had a mission and could concentrate on with our cameras, looking at opportunities and challenges that are out there. So thanks, Katie, for including us both in the project. We enjoyed it.
Thank you, Wendy. Awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Andre. If you can tell us what drew you to the project and what the experience was like as well.
I've long been an advocate for cycling and for safer cycling infrastructure. So as an older adult, I thought this would be a good opportunity to get another perspective on it, but also just in doing advocacy for cycling, it's become apparent that it's really important to have the people who are the decision makers, be on top of the topic from the perspective of active transportation. So Katie is a freshly minted planner, and so she's going to go out into the world. And so, I just think at first I just wanted to encourage anyone who was going to take that as a have that perspective from a professional perspective. And like Wendy, it is COVID. We're all in jail essentially. So this was going to be something that would be different and get me thinking about things differently. So I found it quite interesting.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, now I'm just going to open up the floor. If Wendy or Andre, if you had something that you want to bring up to discuss, something that maybe I showed in some of the previous the pictures of the results. Yeah, when we're building age-friendly, accessible communities, what's really important? What should we be thinking about?
I think community engagement is so important. Like Andre said, we need the decision makers to be listening to the people, and a plan on paper may look very fancy, but when you think about the structure and lack of a wide sidewalk, perhaps in a new urban center where there's going to be a lot of pedestrians, building these new high rises right close to the road with very little outreach, and not even a place for a window box or bit of green, it's a concern. So my neighborhood has a bit more green space, but we certainly have challenges from the commercial side as well as the municipal side when it comes to the built environment. And especially in the winter with snow storage. This project took place before the winter, so we didn't have that challenge, but I think it would have been interesting to revisit, and maybe going forward that will be an opportunity. But snow storage is often overlooked from a pedestrian point of view, especially anybody with mobility challenges.
Or anybody who's just plain trying to walk.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, and at Community Links, I mean, we were so excited to hear about Katie's concept and her invitation to us as a community partner, because that first voice perspective from older adults is really what we push for and what our work is based on. So to have 12 older adults share their experience, I mean, that's everything. And, you know, we're always saying that we want to hear more people's story. We want to hear that first voice, but I think the way that Katie is presenting the results and the way that we can then take this back to community is a chance to actually listen to that voice, right? It's one thing to invite it. It's another to hear it and then take action on it. So we were just so pleased to have older adults as the focus for this work, because as Katie mentioned, that's not necessarily the case often. And research really has it has the opportunity to provide the data and the information to take things forward around advocacy and information sharing.
I just hope that one thing that COVID is going to do for people, no matter what age you are, I think everybody realizes that it's not fun being confined. And that's what a lack of accessibility does for anybody, right? So I'm hoping that we've got like another level of consciousness on what confinement means and what it does to people. And it's not something that people will forget about quickly. So,
yeah, we'll be able to refer to it easily, won't we?
Well, I would hope so. I would hope so.
Mm.
And I think one thing that's sort of a bonus is that if it's easier access for older age group, then it's easier access for everybody. Young families pushing strollers or, just struggling along with a package and a stroller and kid tracking behind or whatever. We've seen more and more of it as we have more new Canadians coming into the city, and they don't always have a vehicle. They're making use of pedestrian ways and so on. But age friendly to me is, 8 to 80 or however you want to describe it. It's very positive. And I think as Halifax is going under a complete review of their regional plan, and complete communities is on the agenda. So I think it's going to be a positive change. And I'm hoping, Katie, that you'll be able to include some of your findings in that regional plan review. I think that'll be positive. I just heard yesterday on the news, Kentville has has submitted their accessibility report, and lots of positives. So we're all going to learn together.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. Yeah, it's so true. Mm-hmm.
And it really is community-based, isn't it, Wendy? Like when you talk about Kentville as an individual community submitting their plan, that's the piece, is that it's about civic engagement. It's about talking to your local councillor, talking to the decision makers from a community point of view. A lot of our councillors are literally our neighbors. And so it's a chance to kind of go out there and have those discussions with people about what they're experiencing, and remembering that you can make a difference by bringing it up, by making sure it's being discussed.
Well, we will all be voting, all 25% of us.
Exactly.
I think there's a focus on trying to increase transit use, but all transit starts with a walk to a bus stop or a terminal or wherever. So those pathways and sidewalks need to be safe and accessible. The signage too, I think we're lacking an adequate signage in general. A lot of our trails and parks, there's no map or way to know what your route is going to be or how long it might take. If you're a slow walker, it could take forever, you know, where am I? And so we all need to ask for more signage. Wayfinding is really important. Not everybody's carrying a smartphone, and
And there isn't coverage everywhere. Like in
Mhm.
rural Nova
Exactly.
Scotia,
Yeah.
it's terrible cell coverage.
right. I think that's a universal problem, probably.
I think, Wendy, when you brought up transit, a few years ago, I sat in on focus groups when they were looking at actually cutting back transit in CBRM, but that's changed now, especially because we have so many foreign students at the university. But it became really apparent to me, although I still drive, I'm not going to be driving that much longer, that without a good transit system, I was going to have trouble living where I live, and I live just a few blocks from downtown. So it really made me think about whether I'd be staying in Sydney or not. And I really like where I live. So, but I'm looking at friends who live in other larger cities who have easier access to services. So transit for me would be in where I live would be a key thing in letting me stay in my house.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's so many places in our rural communities in Nova Scotia that have no access to transit. And yeah, that's a really important.
So it's fine if you have family, but that, that doesn't always work. And you need to be, you really do need to be able to make choices in terms of how you get around and how you get there and who you get to see as an independent individual.
I think as people were making bookings for their COVID vaccination appointments, we learned through the media that some people had to travel 2 or 3 hours. And you're right, there's no transit. So they were quite dependent on community for that service. So we need to take more things to the people.
Yeah, it's really about creating communities that we want to live in, that we want to stay in, and taking it down to that really basic level of what makes me want to stay here? Why do I enjoy being in my community? And Andre, when you're sort of starting to pay attention to your friends' communities and, oh, what do they have? What makes it comfortable to be there, right? We can definitely learn from each other. We can learn from other communities to see what's working and what's not, and really kind of share those ideas and be creative, be innovative. Nova Scotia is aging. We have the oldest population in Canada. And so that's the reality we're facing. And we have the opportunity to have older people living in their own communities, like in their own homes.
There's a new program that Hike Nova Scotia is developing, Walk Nova Scotia, and they're going to be encouraging folks who haven't gotten out to walk because they don't have a walking buddy, or they don't know where to walk, or they just want company. And now that our restrictions are being lifted, I think this program will move forward. But I learned just earlier this week that they were overwhelmed with the positive response right around the province. So it's really positive, and we'll perhaps have more eyes on the ground when you're looking for folks to look at spaces and challenges in your upcoming projects.
Definitely. So now, Wendy and Andre, if you could change like one of the most, and I know this is a hard question to ask, but if you could change like one important thing, like one thing that would make it so much easier to be out and about in your communities, what is that? Like, as we're moving forward, trying to make age-friendly communities, what are these key things we should be thinking about?
The first thing that jumps into my mind, and this goes back to something Wendy said, is winter sidewalk maintenance. And I mean that in the broadest sense. So I've had problems going to a meeting 2 blocks away. I had to drive because I couldn't get out of my house and onto a street safely. That seems ridiculous. And when we have icy winters, that's the case all the time. But it's not even just that. It's if they don't do snow removal from the side of the road, even if you have a car, you can't get out of the car. So they're just, that's the first thing that jumps into mind, because it doesn't happen every winter, but it can be a 4 or 5 month issue. That and sidewalk maintenance and repair, sidewalk connectivity, excuse me. And curb, low back curbs, markings on streets, and types of intersection lighting that make it easy for pedestrians to be seen. So we lost a pedestrian here two weeks ago in an intersection, a person who walked all the time, all his life. So it's sad when vulnerable users aren't recognized.
I guess one of the things that I would remind our decision makers and so on is more education. We lost somebody here in Halifax, same sad story. And it was an intersection with a walking light and so on. Cars, the drivers need more education about respect for signage and traffic rules and watching for pedestrians and just all those positive things that will help make a difference. And lighting at night too, because people have to come and go in the dark through the winter months in particular. And so we need to perhaps encourage people to wear some kind of glow in the dark addition to their backpack or wrists or whatever, because black seems to be the new normal for clothing in the winter. I don't know why, because we need some bright colors to light us up. But yeah, pedestrian safety. There used to be a campaign after we changed the time in the fall. That was often a kickoff time. Heads Up Halifax was done 2 or 3 years. I missed it last year if it happened, but it's a good time to remind folks about safety in the dark. But back to my wayfinding and signage, I think if there was more awareness around just general signage and more crosswalks and overhead signalized lights. One of my pictures was a new solar powered signalized crosswalk. So that's a cheaper way to do it, and it's very effective, but we need the education to go with it. I've seen people ignore it. They don't bother to press the button, or they jaywalk because it's faster to take an angle or whatever. Education is really important. I'm not sure who's going to take that on.
Yeah, I would just add to Wendy that it's also, I mean, I've seen intersections with different things like bump outs, so that the pedestrian is actually in the line of sight of the person who's in the vehicle, because, you know, people in vehicles don't want to hit people, but if it's not designed so that they actually see it, it's very easy for them. They don't have to be distracted. It's very easy for them to not see it because of the way we've designed it. Like, we've designed it for their car to be able to whip around the corner really quickly, which is great. But the driver needs to be able to see, you know, other things other than just looking for other cars. And I think a lot of that, you know, could be improved dramatically if we had better design. Anyway, that's my rant on that one.
No, those are all really important things. And yeah, and I think things that we need to keep talking about and keep expressing their importance, because it's what makes a huge difference for sure.
I know I've been enjoying benches more lately. So seating, Katie, you showed some really neat, creative ways to include seating. So some of our new developments and streetscapes hopefully will add seating to them. Bus stops, on occasion you see a bench, but not at every bus stop. And I've seen people just of all ages just sitting on the curb waiting for a bus. You know, it's what you got to do, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't carry your little stool with you. Some people do that, but when we've been out leading trail walks, people bring a little stool if they know they're going to need something along the way, which is very creative. I haven't got a stool yet.
That is creative. Is it like a carry stool, or is it like a backpack? I'm very curious.
A little three-legged one, yeah.
That's great.
I've seen them built into sort of what would be kind of like a walking stick.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we have those little three-legged ones, Wendy, for camping.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're great, and they're light. Like, my kids can carry them around too. So that's a great idea. But it also highlights that it's necessary, right? Like, I find that we take our kids on trail rides a lot, or for walks and hikes. And we have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so we decide which trail to take based on knowing how many benches they have, whether or not they have outhouses, how close they are to services to be able to fill up water, that sort of thing. So it's all of those little things to think about, whether that's an enjoyable place to visit, you know?
Exactly.
I also think it's the same thing if you look at commercial places. Like, I think another possibly interesting thing coming out of COVID is I mean, there's lots of research on if you can get people out of cars, or, you know, if people choose to walk or bike, like, they spend more money. They just do, because they spend it, you know, locally. So it's in the business's interest to encourage that kind of design too, in terms of commercial areas, instead of, like, we have lots of malls here that are just, it's a giant asphalt thing with some lights on it, but there's not a sidewalk. It doesn't make it easy for you to get to or from your car. It's completely unpleasant. It doesn't look inviting, even though inside it, you know, they've done all sorts of things to make it pleasant. But that sort of, there's just, I don't know how we got to accept that as acceptable, because it's demoralizing and ugly and unsafe. So I think if you move slowly, like on a bike or you walk, you just see things. Like, you see more trash, you see more flowers, whereas when you're whizzing by, doesn't, you know.
And you can have conversations with people and
Exactly.
learn about the history of an old building, or what they're cooking for supper, or a new recipe, that sort of thing. It's all about engaging community, I think, is so important. We've lost that in the last little while in terms of a healthier community spaces. One of the things during COVID was that so many places were closed. There was no or limited access to public washrooms. So that was one learning, I think, from COVID, is that there needs to be more public washrooms that are open. You can't count on the local coffee shop if they're all closed, you know, drive-through only. So public washrooms, I know, Katie, you found that to be an important topic.
Definitely. And public washrooms that are also accessible. Some of the participants that had like some accessibility needs, they really found it challenging to find handrails or even just space to get in with their walker. It's unfortunate that it's so challenging to find a public washroom and then an accessible public washroom. It makes it so that you can't go too far from home because you can't count on being able to use the washroom when you need to. So yeah,
it's shocking. It's actually, I think it's shocking.
Well, the city of Halifax did a study on public washrooms and they're going to review it in 5 years. To me, that's laughable.
No, I have to agree, Wendy. But we also live in a society that doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that people use washrooms. I don't know why, but they don't, you know.
About human-centered design, right? Like designing for humans, thinking about humans walking around in human bodies, right? We're not designing for cars. We're not designing for the most efficient buildings. We're designing for the people that are on those roads and on those sidewalks and in those buildings and what that experience is. So yeah, I just so appreciate your insight.
And also, you know, we want those people. Everybody wants those people. It's just
Exactly.
sort of shocking that they wouldn't, you know, well, we can't accommodate that. Well, you want people, you know, like they come with things, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We have about 10 minutes left. I know Katie and Megan, you had some news that you wanted to share, but any last thoughts? Any important things anybody wanted to bring up or ask or chat about?
Tell your decision makers what you want and keep telling them. Be friendly, but keep telling them.
And maybe take them on a walk. If they don't see the photograph, they can't figure it out, take them out there and invite them on a little stroll or walk about or whatever to see it with their own eyes. I think that's often, as we learned, the best way. And since the project, I found some more spots that we need to highlight. So keep at it.
Now, Wendy and Andre, I wonder if you can speak to, I think both of you have mentioned it in different ways before, but what was it like having to go out and take photographs? Like, what was your process? Did you plan where you were going to take the photographs? Did you kind of just go on a walk and see what stood out to you? Maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm by nature a person who categorizes things. So first, I had to sort of make a list. And what was really hard was getting things that I thought were good. I hate to say that. And also trying to find a photo, the photo has to communicate what you're trying to talk about, and that's not always the easiest thing. Like the hardest one for me was the washroom, which I think I used the Y for. But then that it became, was like sort of delved into it some more. It is a very complicated issue, although it has a very interesting history, which goes back to feminism. But that part was hard. So, but that's what made it interesting. Right.
I think we made lists and we also did some observations, but the most challenging one for us was a pedestrian crosswalk sign that takes you right into the ditch along at Larry Utech by the 102. So we had to find a spot to stand and take that photograph without getting hit. You know, like, come on now. Yeah. And we were very involved with trails, as I mentioned earlier, we used to go to a lot of public meetings. And this is what annoyed me at the time. The city and the province were not communicating on their jurisdictions, although they were like the human scale, which Meagan mentioned is so important. It's about the people, but they wouldn't talk to one another about connecting the dots, the connectivity that's so important. So there we are left with a pedestrian crosswalk that is dangerous and poorly located and needs to be improved, which we hope will come down the pipes. But that was just one image. Another one that comes to mind was leaving the transit stop and attempting to go shopping at Bears Lake, where there's no sidewalks approaching any of the commercial establishments. And you see people, you know, struggling with their groceries and so on, or just, you know, having to walk up the road because don't feel safe on the slippery, grassy slopes.
Yeah, so important. And so many great pictures. I wish we could just keep showing all these important pictures over and over again, because what I love about this whole project is that I think the saying is a picture tells like a 1,000 words or something. And I think it's so true. The pictures, they're really powerful and they tell a really big story. And I like the context of having to really, you know, think and make sure the picture you're taking is telling that story. Yeah, it's so important. Meagan, do you want to announce our
Sure,
meeting?
yeah. Well, I was just thinking like a lot of what's being said makes me want to share. So yeah, I will. Just what Katie was saying, she and I had a lot of chats about like what else could be done with this information. These photos are so valuable, more people need to see them. How can we share this? And at one point, Katie said to me, it would be so great to do like a photo book or something. And I was like, say more. And she told me about photo books and how that works. And so photo books are an opportunity to share the photos in kind of a narrative way. And so she and I talked some more, and we actually ended up applying for an age-friendly communities grant from the province through the Department of Seniors, and Community Links did that application. We brought Katie on as a partner, and Makiko from the Peach Research Unit is also helping out with that as a partner. And we're really excited to say that we were approved in full for all of the money that we applied for. And so we're taking this model of the project that we worked on with Wendy and Andre and the other participants, and we're doing a similar project again. We're expanding it. It's still province-wide. We are creating a advisory committee made up of older adults to really speak to each piece of the project as we move along. It's a one-year project. We'll also be doing an expanded version of the photo voice activities. We're going to have community engagement sessions using graphic recording, which is really exciting. And that graphic recording will go into the photo book. So we're using we're using photos for the photo book from the participants. The graphic recording, we're working with an illustrator. We're really excited that's moving forward. The photo book will also provide some age-friendly community education on a really basic level for the general public to learn more and think more about age-friendly communities and how that benefits everybody. So that's coming. Katie and I have already gotten started. And if anyone's interested in learning more or being involved, you can just send us an email at Community Links, and that's info@nscommunitylinks.ca. yeah, so that's really exciting, and we hope to see some people come out and share their experiences like Andre and Wendy have.
Very exciting. Congratulations. It's always relieving to know that all the hard work for the grant writing and proposals paid off. So congratulations to you both. That's really, really exciting. And just this work in general is really exciting. I know when I first saw the presentation Katie did, I was just excited about it because it's so simple. It's such a simple concept, but it's really powerful, and it illustrates the need to have a lot of these really simple things changed so that everyone in the community, like Andre and Wendy, both of you multiple times throughout the discussion were mentioning how these changes would benefit everyone, not just older adults, but it's helpful for everybody, whether we have a limitation or not. It's still useful for everyone. So I'm really glad that we had this opportunity. It was a really valuable, insightful conversation. Wendy, I know you're quite active in the HRM community, so I'm sure we'll see each other in the future as well. Andre, I wish you all the best in your endeavors too moving forward, and certainly reach out to us or to any other partners in the future as well. We are doing a seniors week in October at reachAbility, so we will be doing some outreach for that as well. So anything else, any parting words from anyone before we end the session today?
Melanie, I just want to thank reachAbility so much for inviting us to have an opportunity to talk about the project and about the work that's been done. You guys are doing such great work with Accessibility Week, so thank you.
Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Wendy and Andre, for joining us. I think, I mean, this would not be the same without you. It's the whole point of this project is to be sharing your perspectives, and you should be the ones to share it. So I am so glad you were able to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.